Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the United Kingdom Armed Forces ACC Championship. Getting a little bit confused there because it is, of course, the Royal Air Force running this one. But we are jumping straight to trackside, zero downtime. Apologies for the slight delay in the broadcast start, but we are joining our drivers hot here at the Hungaroring. We are already underway with our first qualifying laps as we're on board with Bailey, Vernon, Higgs. Now, I'm joined by Nathan Richards. What do you think of this track, mate?
It's an interesting one. I mean, overtaking is quite scarce around the Hungaroring, but it is one of those which shows your pure pace and skill, because it is a difficult track to get right, especially in qualifying, of course, what we're in right now. It's going to be a challenge for the drivers here tonight, and then, of course, heading into the race, it's going to be interesting because they're going to try and make moves in places where on another circuit you wouldn't be going for moves there, but here you've got to go for them whenever you have that opportunity. So very excited to see what they can all do tonight. Of course, we're on board here with Bailey, Vernon, Higgs, who is currently P2 in the standings, so a big night for the McLaren.
A big night for him and a lot to prove out here. He's got a pretty big burden to deal with, and at this point in time, he's got a little bit of a pocket. Tyrone not being present last round did give a window of opportunity, but now the pressure is back on. I will say, he is Mr. Consistent. He's had 4 second-place finishes, so he certainly has got the consistency more than down. Let's see if that reflects here in qualifying as he comes through the final corners. Now making his way, that deceptively long right-hander. And now we are sweeping through to the start-finish line. Initial benchmark, 44.377 coming in from Vernon Higgs. Who's going to be next through? David Wrench, current championship leader. Let's see what he's got under the hood there of that McLaren. Across the line coming up. And it will be a invalid 0.137, but it is not a valid time. A few more cars now making their way through. Matt Steele, for example. Only Vernon Higgs so far with a valid time, although Craig Luer just came through with a 47.2.
Indeed, a nice lap there from Luer as he will see Matt Steele jumps up to P3 there at 47.490. So certainly we'll be looking for some improvements, but either way, a nice lap indeed as we do see. I think that's Ryan Worley jumping up into P2 there, just behind the back of Bailey, Vernon Higgs, who yet is toppled away from that top spot as we see Dingo here heading into the final corner in the McLaren. We'll have to see what they can do as they head out the final corner up to the line. Let's see what it will be here for Dingo 200. And it's an invalid lap. No lap time sets there, as we did see Cleland jump up into P3 a couple of seconds away from Vernon Higgs. And here is Connor Palmer in a Ferrari heading up to the line now. What will it be for the Ferrari car? Also an invalid lap, and well, that's what we've seen, at least, I think, 3 of the drivers we've been on board with here this evening, Snappy. So it's definitely a difficult one when it comes to keeping yourselves within those white lines.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of drivers just getting their feelers out in terms of the Hungaroring. It's not an easy track to get right. You have to find a delicate balance. Particularly, a lot of invalidations come out in sort of turn 6, turn 7, around the sort of midpoint of the track. I mean, we'll see right now Dingo just coming up to it, the not infamous chicane per se, but it's one that particularly in qualifying tends to catch a lot of drivers off guard. It's a quick shift to the right and deceptively tight left-hander as well, so you really have to commit to that first half of the chicane, otherwise you do get yourself into a bad position and you can invalidate very easily.
Certainly, it's a horrible chicane, even if it's in F1 cars, in other open wheel cars or GT3s and GT4s. It is such a difficult chicane to get right, as here we can see Jack Lemon in P13, of course, hasn't set a lap yet. We'll see what he can do here in the Ferrari, exiting out of the final corner up to the line where we put Jack Lemon up to P6 there, a couple of seconds, well, about a second away from that top time of Bailey, Vernon Higgs, of course, still 2/10 clear of Jack Simpson, and then another half a second ahead of David Wrench in third. Here is Jack Simpson, of course, who is in P2 at the moment, but has got a couple of cars ahead there. One of the BMWs in the way as they heading to the chicane, and that's not going to help him at all here on this lap. Ryan, I am noticing further behind there, Wrench and Eggert are both up by 4/10, and we did see there Eggert jump up into P3. Let's see what David Wrench can do here in that final sector, looking to try and flirt with that P2 spot here.
Yep, looking to dance on the line of the P1 spot. But now, coming through that final sector, 7/10 up on the deltas, and most importantly needs to link this up in the final couple of corners. Very nice last sector here so far. Can he link it all together? Remember, he's got a lot riding on his shoulders. 20 points gap between himself and Vernon Higgs, but still not able to rest on his laurels. That delta is looking massive as he comes through. Final corner now. This could be into the 43s. What's he going to do? 43.5. He's eclipsed the current pole time. He's got himself well and truly into P1. Vernon Higgs got a massive lot of work to do now. Jack Simpson coming through with an invalid, but that was this setup lap, and you weren't here last couple of rounds, I don't think, Nathan, but we've really seen an awakening from Jack Simpson. He's gone from a sort of wobbly start at points, or wobbly times at points, to all of a sudden rocketing towards the front. He utterly dominated Misano, and had it not been for an issue in Kyalami, we would have seen him do just as well there.
Indeed, and before I came here for this round, of course, I'd done one more in the past, which was, I think, Brands Hatch, and he was in and around that midfield, and certainly looking quite strong here as we head into, I believe, round 7 of the championship here at the Hungaroring. As here's Conor Eggert heading up to the line. He's up by half a second here. It says on our timing screens, up to the line he goes. Will it be a jump up to P2? It certainly will. A 43.880 there for Conor Eggert, and there a lot of work is on. Bailey Vernon Higgs, of course, was on pole a minute ago, quite comfortably. But with 16 minutes to go, he now sits half a second away from the lap time of David Wrench. And we can see as well behind, Jack Simpson is also up by a nice couple of tenths in their lap. So could be possible P4 for here for Vernon Higgs if he doesn't get this next lap hooked up, as here's Ethan Lee in P10 at the moment. He's up by a second and a half here. Could be looking to jump up to around where Tyrone and Worley are in P6 and P7 as he heads through the final corner here in the BMW. Up to the line, of course, a very long right-hander. Short dash to the finish line. Will it be anywhere near P6? It will. Goes into 6th place as David Wrench, Jack Simpson goes to the top with a 0.4.
What did I say? What did I say? Simpson continues their streak and is utterly crushing it these past 3 races. Today seems to be no different. 43.4, just edging out David Wrench for the pole position time. And with that, he has got a bit of work on his hands. Let's see if the rest of the field is getting improvements. The big thing we're seeing here right now is a lot of drivers are improving by a significant amount of time, but not necessarily on position. We have a lot of spacing. It's about 4 seconds between first and last, being Mark Gladwell in P16 with a 47.9. We're going to see Glenberry coming up in 44.4. He's going to slot himself neatly into P5. Very nicely done there. And 15 minutes left to go on the clock. The pressure is still on.
It certainly is. And we have L. Davis. Would you be able to enlighten me to Davis's first name? Because I presume it's not L.
Well, that's what I'm going to go with. I just usually call the surnames sometimes just when things get frenetic. So, Davis it is.
Yeah, I'm sure Davis wasn't here last time when I was here about 3 rounds ago. So a couple of names I've got to get used to as Davis jumps up into that top 10 and just ahead of David's son. As we can see further ahead, I think Simpson is just starting another lap now. Of course, he's still on that top spot, as here we see Craig Fitton, P17, around 4 seconds away nearly from that top spot, so has to find time in this final set. Currently up by a second and a half, heading into the final corner. Let's see what the McLaren can do. Of course, we know the McLaren is a decent car around here, so it should be a lot higher than 17th. To the line goes to P12, just ahead of Dingo 200, and then Cleland as well in P14. And then still, one driver yet to set a time, and that is Palmer, down in 19th. And I've noticed as well the grid has grown because last time I was here there was only 15 drivers, so it's nice to see a bigger grid here in this championship.
Yeah, quite a strong grid and quite a strong field of competitors as well. You're certainly noticing the converging of the times. We're seeing a lot more races into the 43s, 44s, and 45s as well. You do still have some who are teetering towards the back line, but there is plenty of chances left still to go for that lap, to go for that push. We see Connor Palmer, who is bowing out of the lap there, who's going to take a bit of an exercise outside of the track limits, and many drivers actually in the pits at this stage, just trying to set themselves up for the next few laps and what will eventually carry them to the end of the qualifying session.
Indeed, only 13 minutes to go in this one, as that's Connor Palmer taking an unideal line.
Points for style.
Into turn number 13. Yeah, that is, well, I suppose if it was a drifting competition, he might get a couple of decent points for that, but not here, no. And either way, I've got to say I'm surprised how he managed to get that to drift round, because I've played ACC quite a lot and iRacing as well in the GT3s, and they're not really easy to spin around into a corner unless you, well, have a questionable setup, that's for sure.
I mean, you can make your setups a little bit more comfortable with riding on the limit, a little bit more comfortable with slip angle. I know some drivers tend to run their setups a bit more aggressively, so have it a bit snappier at that front end, get that rotation, but at the cost of rear end stability, obviously. And then some drivers like to play it a bit more conservative, have a stable rear end, even if it means understeer, it's consistent, they can work with it.
Yeah, definitely. It's all preference and style here, and the same goes for the cars as well. So many different cars, and it all goes down to style. I mean, Tyrone here is in probably one of the worst cars on the game in terms of performance, because it is rather slow because it's such a heavy boat, is the Bentley. But if it's one of those cars that you're comfortable in, you're going to be quicker than those in better cars, because it's all about being comfortable and being able to push the most out of the car you're in. And here's Tyrone heading into the final corner, turn 14 around this circuit. Let's see what he can do in the Bentley. Heading up to the line. Will it be any higher than P9 here? You'd think it'd be a lot higher. Only P7, and I've got to say that's a surprise, because Tyrone's third in the championship, was leading it at one point, and now sits at 1.2 seconds away from pole position. But then again, that's like what I said before. The cars have big differences, and this Bentley doesn't seem to like this track that much, I don't think, Snappy.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. It's a very heavy platform, but it's also a very stable one. So if you have a lot of corners that will benefit from that sort of high-speed turn-in, then you will be fine. But say the Bentley doesn't seem to be gelling too well to this one, or at least Tyrone hasn't been able to find the magic just yet. It rotates well, but it has got a lot of mass to shift, and certainly is one of the larger cars on the roster. I mean, you compare that to something like the Ferrari, the 296, or even the Mercedes AMG, Glyn Berry right now, who we've seen up and down the field. It's a little bit hard to tell, at least from the spectator point of view, at least from our point of view, how these cars really differ. You have to really be in the driving seat, but it is going to be in sort of marked ways and subtle ways that these cars differ, whether that's your ability to lean on it mid-corner, apply a bit more throttle, whether there's a bit of slip angle before it goes past the point of no return. It's all these little variables. You've got to find the car that fits.
Yeah, certainly, and this Mercedes is not an easy car to drive in ACC. I've driven it quite a lot, and it is a difficult little car, of course, a lot of oversteer, but of course, if you're good with oversteer, it is a really, really powerful machine, as I think Limbo there now starting another lap here in this session. Of course, at the top, nothing has really changed between our top 7, top 8, really. It's all been the same all session. Here's Connor Eggert. He's looking to try and find an improvement. Only 1/10 back from Bailey Vernon Higgs, and could find that in one set quite easily around this circuit, especially with the fact he's around 4/10 off of that pole position. Tells you there's a lot of time to find in this green Ferrari. And then, of course, further ahead, once you get to like Jack Simpson level and David Ranch, when you're right at the top of the field, it's so hard to find that little bit of time. But then also you've got to kind of evaluate what you do going into the lap, because if you've got nothing to lose and you want to try and get that pole position or maintain it, if you find time in the first and second sector, if you know that third sector where you've lost time, you get into a bit of a mind game then, because you're scared to push because you know you can make a mistake. So when you're at the top, it's so difficult to improve on those big lap times.
Yeah, I guess it can swing both ways. On the one hand, if you are at the top, it is, like you said, just mechanically harder to get additional time. But at the same time, you aren't as afraid in some cases to push because you know that you've got a solid time to fall back on. I mean, let's take a bit of a contrast. Let's look at Connor Palmer. He's the only driver at this point yet to set a time on the field. Now, Connor, if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't even be pushing that hard. I just want a time on the boards. Because if nothing else, that could get me past maybe Gladwell or Lua at a push. But you just need something on the boards a lot of the time. It's the mental game. It's that insurance that you want to be able to push harder and know you have something to fall back on.
Yeah, and I think it shows as well how competitive the grid is, and that's why it's difficult for those that normally are a little bit slower on pace, as Tyrone there jumps up to P5 with a purple first sector. But I mean, looking at the gaps here, P1 to P11 is separated by pretty much just under 2 seconds, which is very competitive. So for those behind, they've got a lot of work on their hands to get within that 2 seconds and to get within that top 10, top 11 here. So Dingo, for example, he's finding 4 tenths on this lap time so far, now 5 tenths. If he can find another 10th, he'll be into that top 11 and be in a decent competitive position heading into the race. Let's see what he can do. Heading out of the final corner here in the McLaren. Does run a little bit wider, and that will invalidate his lap time and won't find an improvement. So a big shame there for Dingo. And then we can see further ahead, a few other drivers actually started to find some more time. We've got Ethan Lee, Davis, Ryan Worley, all up on their previous bests. And then, of course, those at the top, Jack Simpson, David Wrench and Bailey Vernon Higgs can't really find much on their best lap times. And that kind of shows that they possibly hit the maximum of what they could have achieved. Because here, compared to games such as F1 or iRacing, the track evolution doesn't really factor that much into the session, considering it's only an 18-minute session here.
Yeah, it's a tight window, and it's not an easy one to handle. In terms of the racer's morale, I'm sure at this point, if you're sitting in the 43s, that you are laughing, but if you're in the 46s, then you'd certainly be feeling that pressure. I mean, looking at that midfield, like you said, quite a tight grid spread. I mean, even, say, P6 now being taken by Ethan Lee, immediately being leapfrogged by Glenn Berry, just coming across 44.1. Even just a couple of tenths, 2 to 3 tenths of a second, that's going to be enough. That is all you need to jump multiple positions in cases.
Yeah, certainly, as we can see there as well, Ryan Worley up by half a second at the moment. That would put him possibly up into P8, maybe P7 if you can find a late charge in that final sector. So it's very key for those to be able to find that little bit of time, as we do see Connor Palmer setting a lap on the board, a 1 minute 50.2, of course, just getting that banker lap in. Of course, can they look to try and improve and get some better lap times, as here we can see Luke Cleland in P14 at the moment. Of course, not being the best qualifying session so far here for Luke in the Ferrari. He's up by half a second at the moment, so could jump up into P12 ahead of Craig Fitton. And of course, find even more time in this final sector here. So let's see what Cleland can do. Just heading into turn 13. Of course, a very difficult left-hander. Of course, want to carry as much speed through as possible, but it's also very easy to run wide and off the circuit. But Luke takes that rather nicely now into turn 14 at the final corner. Of course, you want to kind of hook that inside line, then start to put it out wide as you head your way on that main straight down to the finish line. Will it be a top 10 here for Cleland? No. Does improve a position, but not enough to go any higher here. As we do look further ahead, it does seem that Ryan Worley's on the cusp of finding a bit of time here.
So yeah, on the cusp is the right word indeed. The Colonelmobile strikes once more to the track, the number 30 Ferrari, making quite a name for itself. His last round is anything to go by, and I'm looking forward to the edits that come through. But as we make his way through, it's now coming into the final sector. He's teetering on that time. Remember, just a single tenth, he could put himself past Ethan Lee potentially. A lot could be gained here. Only 100th of a second between Tyrone and Ethan. So there will be a big chance. All in this final corner. Can he link it up? Well, he's leaning towards 2 tenths gained. Let's see if he can connect it up, bring it home. It's a .302. It's so close, but it's not quite there. Just still behind Lee and Tyrone.
Indeed, and stays in P8 here as we Do see Craig Fitton in P12 is not up at all on their last lap time. He's, well, 1.4 seconds down, so I presume he'll be looking to go again here in this one very shortly. 3 minutes and 40 seconds to go in this one, so they do have time for 1 or 2 laps. I don't think that there's enough to get 3 in here. So, of course, if you're going to mess up this lap, you've got 1 or 2 more opportunities to go for that pole position spot. Of course, we can see Jack Simpson actually finding time on his previous best, which is a 1:43.490, heading into the chicane that turns 8 to 9 in the Lamborghini. Of course, a very little, it's quite a little volatile car, this one, is it can just be thrown into a corner and it sticks, and that's what is helping Jack around this circuit. A lot of medium and high speed corners are to the Lamborghini's advantage here as he heads to the end of sector 2. He's up by a couple of tenths, could be up into the 43.2s possibly here as he heads down to turn 12. Does make a mistake on the exit of turn 11 and has lost a bit of time here on this one, but of course a final sector to go. Try not to run too wide as you head into turn number 13. Of course, keep it to the inside, don't hit that grey curb on the inside though, and then of course don't run too wide here into the final corner, Sappy. This could be a 0.2 or possibly a 0.1 if you can find this final corner.
I mean, I know we said that it's not easy to tell the difference in driving style from the cars alone, but I think the Lamborghini might be an exception. 0.227, dominating every sector. Jack Simpson is on fire. That Lamborghini, I don't know what he's got cooking under there, but it must be some Michelin star stuff. The way he's handling that car, firing it through corners, literally snapping it in, and it just bites, and he's not even a scintilla of hesitation. Matt Steele coming up to the line as well. 46.2 is going to leapfrog George Pausland, and that is going to be everyone now having set a lap time. Connor Palmer with a 49.5, but we are effectively getting into the final stage of qualifying. You can see a majority of the field in the pits by this point. They know that they're not going to have enough time from this stage to get themselves around that track. So if you're in the pits at this point, consider your qualifying campaign at a close. Davidson coming through, but then many others also going to be following suit in just a moment. Here is Ethan Lee coming to start a lap, I believe, and it will be not the only one, as we have also David Reg going for a last attempt, seeing if he can take that pole spot and protect his championship.
Yep, has to find 3/10 in this latest lap. Of course, will be difficult, but certainly not impossible here for David Wrench, as we do see Peter Davidson. He's up by half a second here on their lap, so we'll have to see what he can do as he heads up to the line probably very shortly. I think that might be him here in towards turn 12. Has found half a second, so he's not actually going to find a position here unless he can find 7/10, but will still at least be a little bit closer to Davis, and of course a little bit further away from P12 and below, as he has made a mistake though into turn 13, has cost him a couple of tenths here into the final corner. Can he find time in that last corner? He's lost even more. He's only going to improve by 0.3 of a second and will stay P11 there, still 4 tenths away from P10 of Davis. And then of course further ahead, Wrench has already invalidated that lap and won't find time, and Bailey Vernon Higgs is already 2 tenths down here, so nobody will be challenging the lap time of Jack Simpson. A 43.2, just over 3 tenths separates himself and David Wrench. And I mean, at the start of the season and back when I was here at Brands Hatch, I think it was David Wrench was unstoppable. You'd think nobody was going to catch him, but today it all turns, and now Jack Simpson is the one that nobody can catch.
Yep, how the turntables and the way things have changed is quite a substantial one. It's going to be a last-ditch effort for a couple, but I think the curtains are falling on everyone on this race course. We can see invalidations left, right and centre. Most of the drivers now heading into the pits. We'll of course take the full grid walk in a moment, but last couple of cars now coming through is going to be Simpson, Wrench, Glynn, all making their way through the line. It's going to be, in fact, it is going to be a minor hiccup on the timing board. 43.327, an exact 10th down on Jack Simpson. Simpson is going to be heading into the pits, so exiting in traditional fashion. And we'll see who has got the moxie for the Hungaroring. I will be blunt here. The main thing that I think of when I think of the Hungaroring is twofold. I think brilliant racing, but I also think of a certain movie that tried to pass this off as Silverstone and Le Mans.
Oh, oh, was it no? Was it the Gran Turismo movie?
Bing bing.
Yes. Wasn't it? Didn't they do it backwards as well?
Well, I admire the creativity. They probably couldn't get licensing rights on the day.
Because they did Hungaroring as the final corner was turn 1. I remember that. I watched it. I mean, it didn't ruin the film because I liked the film. For people who did watch racing,
it's a good film.
Would they?
It's a good film.
It was.
But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. I think we're going to take a bit of a track walk and see who our drivers are for today. So after an electric qualifying session, it's going to be Jack Simpson who takes the 4 as we head into the race with David Wrench alongside him in row 1. Row 2 is going to be taken by Bailey Vernon Higgs and Connor Eggert, who is making a bit of a splash early days in, I think this is their debut. I can't say I've seen them on the track this side in the season, so strong debut if that is the case. Glenberry's going to be row 3 with Tyrone lining up alongside the what was championship leader, now on the back foot, having to charge forward and make a bit of a splash again on the boards. Ethan Lee and Ryan Worley are going to be committed to row 4 with 7th and 8th position, and then Jack Lemon along with Davis in P9 and P10 to complete our top 10. Second half of the grid is going to be Peter Davidson in the 73, Craig Fitton in the 77, Luke Cleland and Dingo with row 7 in the 31 and 938 cars. Matt Steele alongside George Palsland is going to be row 8 with row 9 of Craig Lewis, Mark Gladwell. Finally, Connor Palmer completes your grid in row 10, 19th position. And some very flashy liveries as well as we've made our way through here.
Yeah, definitely. I do like Connor Palmer's livery, actually. That red, blue and white one. I presume that's something to do with the UK flag. I really do like that livery. And also, in chat as well, Ryan, where did I get Ryan from? Connor Palmer is saying that he's not looking forward to racing this. He's returning to racing after a long break. Well, Connor, we wish you the best of luck, and hopefully the race goes a little bit your way, as I think we're about to get ready for a formation lap.
Indeed, we are. And I'll say, returning from a long break of racing, it's hard. You really do have to fight to get your bearings back. You have to relearn a lot of what you used to drive. So I certainly feel for you, mate, and wish you nothing but the best of luck as you return to the track. And many drivers are now making their way forward as formation is about to begin. It's looking beautiful out here at the Hungaroring. 28 degrees surface temp, 20 degrees ambient. Track is looking perfect for racing.
It certainly is, and it's going to be a very exciting afternoon. Well, afternoon in game, but of course evening here for those watching if you are in the UK or Europe. And of course a big hello to everybody if you're watching from somewhere else in the world. But here we can see Tyrone, a massive slide out of turn 1 in the Bentley. And I mean, it takes some skill to make that thing go half spinning out of a corner. Of course, a very, very planted and heavy car will certainly be one of those that if he does get a tap, it won't really affect him compared to others who will end up with no front bumper or rear bumper. He'll just be there with a bit of a scratch on the front or rear of his car. A very robust car is the Bentley. As here we can see the front of Craig Fitton, of course P12 here just behind Peter Davidson, and it seems that the Ferrari is rather the favoured car here. There's about, what, 8 of them I think on this field if I correct correctly, compared to the McLaren in second with only 5.
Yeah, in general, the Ferrari tends to be a more favourable pick, a more popular pick amongst the drivers at the very least, as we do see it mostly dominating the grid out here tonight. The McLaren is a close second, the 720S being another strong pick. You can see Wrench, Vernon Higgs both running it, and to good effect. But we do also have some oddballs. We do have, of course, the Lexus of Mark Gladwell, the Bentley of Tyrone, we have the Lamborghini of Jack Simpson, we have the Mercedes AMG of Glenberry, and the BMW of Ethan Lee. And a backwards McLaren, it seems, that we just passed by. That is going to be Palsland, who managed to spin on the formation lap.
Yeah, not ideal, that's for sure. I presume he can just make his way past the others and get back into his position, but I'm not entirely sure. I've never spun on a formation lap here in ACC, and I think it's not that I wouldn't have the lack of skill to, because I certainly would, but I'd just be very, very careful so I don't end up spinning, so I'd rather not find out if I'll be able to go back into my position afterwards. But here we can see Simpson, of course, getting ready now into turn 13. Of course, all the cars lining alongside, and now they've got to be careful not to tap the back of each other, because I've seen a lot of close calls here as they head into turn 13, and someone eventually is going to have a bit of a tap.
Yeah, eventually it is going to get a little bit frenetic. You do have ghosting throughout the formation lap, but once that green flag falls, your opponents are as solid as anything, and you will find out the hard way if you are not careful. We'll jump aboard with the helicopter as we approach our way to the final corner, and as we make our way down. It's been a great season thus far. We're here with round 7 at the Hungaroring. The track is hot one more time as the second half of the season is about to officially get underway. The green lights are up, and immediately it's going to be a hard charge. There's going to be a lot of positions being fought for all at once. As Tyrone going for an early charge, using that Bentley's brute strength to immediately charge forward into P5. Go for a bit of a challenge. There's Posland very deep onto the inside. Ethan Lee, Glenn Berry with a bit of a rearward kick, trying to get that Mercedes AMG under control. Tyrone with a jump up into P4. Connor Eggett on his left. He's going to have to fight for the space though, and be very careful with how he plays it. Eggett with a good defense, but there's a spin just behind. There is going to be chaos erupting as there is contact left, right and centre. Jack Lemon being thoroughly hung out to dry, and looks like he's limping his car. Gladwell making quick work of him. Even Connor Palmer could be getting by in a moment. Lots of chaotic opening moves here. We will review in full later on, but an opening lap to remember for sure. Contact warnings being dished out left, right and centre.
Indeed, and yeah, not the best start for some, but for those at the front, a really good start, getting straight into their positions and just starting to pull away. Of course, Simpson at the top by 4/10 to Range, and then all those behind are starting to already have a bit of a gap here, so it just shows how quick our top two are at the moment as we head our way back down towards turn number 12, as we head our way into the braking zone of turn 13, and Tyrone in P5 as we head our way through. Let's see what he can do. Of course, we'll be looking to get ahead of Eggett. Was looking for it on lap 1, but of course Eggett got the better of him into turn 3, so now he's got to do that all over again.
Yeah, he did get a substantial challenge on Eggett before, but Eggett just had the defense. He was able to hold his line. He was able to squeeze him effectively out of that second sector in particular. But here comes Tyrone with a good exit now, challenging forward and trying to get the best out of his situation. He's going to go to the inside and, oh, massive tank slapper into the wall there. There's Craig Fitton. We just saw him in the back line. I think he made contact. I think it was with Powsland. That's what we're getting the other car as a signal for. We'll review that in a moment. But brutal hit. He's going to be suffering quite the damage from that. Really brutal stuff. Not having a good time whatsoever. And right now, going to be under a heck of a lot of pressure as the field is going to be squeezing each other, getting as much as they can on their shoulders. David Wrench looking like he's trying his best to push on to Jack Simpson in terms of space. Will be having a bit of a challenge, however, as Simpson is really holding the line well on defense. Fitton trying to get a bit of a recovery here, coming up to the back of, fittingly, Powsland. If that was the case that happened earlier, I think a bit of poetic justice might be in order if he does manage to overtake Powsland, despite the hefty damage on contact from that earlier incident. But the mid-pack has mostly settled themselves down. There hasn't been much in the way of chaos following that last lap or so, that first lap. And as we cross our way through into 2 laps now, it will be just a case of now trying to settle into positions. We have David Wrench getting the fastest lap of the session, and by some decent margin, over a 10th faster than Jack Simpson, in every sector bar sector 1 being faster than his compatriot. Davis on the back of Worley, really going aggressive here and trying his best to hunt down See what he can get out of here. Now coming into turn 2. And just gently making their way. Oh no, there's Tyrone. We have lost Tyrone. Tyrone's headed into the pit lane immediately. In fact, let's take a bit of a replay and see exactly what happened. So here is Tyrone. Let's see what happened. Coming into turn 2 here. Looks like he is pushing through and just went straight on. Managing to dodge out of the way of the circuit, but that tends to be a signifier of a technical issue in most cases. Hopefully he will have a quickly facilitated recovery. You see Wrench now 0.2 of a second behind. And Wrench is now going to be under a lot of pressure to perform. Simpson is holding his line and doing so with poise and conviction. He's not feeling very phased. And I think he's handling himself quite well. He's not going to have much to worry about if he keeps this up. Wrench is the one who is currently on the back foot. He's got to attack onto Simpson, the driver that we know is capable of immense pace, and just set the fastest lap with a .380. So we know that he has the pace on tap. While we have got a moment, let's actually review some of the first opening incidents. So we're going to take it first from Ethan Lee's perspective, and then we will be dropping away and seeing what happened. So full bird's eye view, convergence, tap on Tyrone, tap on Eggert, and you can see mostly intact for the first corner, but it's when you get to the second corner that things get nasty. Coming through out of 1A and then into 2. Looks like this is Jack Lemon, who was the unlucky spinner before. A second contact does bring them back into the correct orientation, but where we picked up on with the main cam, it was a brutal wake-up call. And he was kicked all the way down. Luckily, he is recovering. He's in 15th right now and trying to close that gap to Clearland. But he's not going to have an easy time of it. Davis has dropped back. Glenn Berry is, in fact, going to be hunting for his position now. We'll see what he's got. Say Worley in the KFC car. I do love it.
Yeah,
I really do love it.
Yeah, I like it a lot, to be fair. Sorry about that. I had to pop away for a moment. I'm back, and well, here we are, 52 minutes to go. A lot of action still to uncover here around the Hungaroring. A really, really fantastic circuit, and here we can see Wrench and Simpson battling for the lead. Down towards turn number 3, we can see Wrench immediately to the inside, looking to take that position away. Can he get it done? He can't. No, he's had to try and force a move. But there we can see Simpson immediately on the power, on the throttle, and keeps that first place spot.
Yeah, just locking him out of there. So the camera hiccuped at a bad time, but when we return, you can see Wrench is trying to gauge Simpson now. I think he's looking to see how he reacts to certain attacks. Left, right, heavy lunge versus light, consistent pressure. Seeing how he reacts and trying to figure out the best way to take his spot, take him into P1.
Indeed, as they head their way through the chicane. And you can just see in certain corners where that McLaren's better. And then, of course, in other corners, you can see where the Lamborghini is also a lot better here. So it's very equal between these two at the moment. And with Bailey Vernon Higgs as well, I presume he's probably got the pace to be a bit closer. But it might be easy just to sit a little bit further back and watch these two battle it out. And hopefully, you know, for Bailey's case, these two come together and he can fly through into P1. Of course, for the top two, they just want to keep it clean, keep it civil, and of course, get home in first and second place as they head their way through out of turn 13 into the final corner once again. And then we can see as well that gap is starting to really increase those behind. Conor Eggert there, he's over 7 seconds back nearly. Never mind, that gap's flew down. I'm not sure what's happened there, but things are happening on the timing boards, which I don't understand. But the back down towards turn 1 and the top 3 remain the same.
Yeah, so Bailey is going to be gaining the most out of this. The Simpson and Wrench fight, they're going to be running suboptimal lines. They're going to be putting themselves in awkward positions. And ultimately, they're going to let Bailey, Vernon, Higgs close in within that half-second barrier. And before you know it, he's going to be right there, breathing down neck, and going to be in the heat of the fight. So they've got to be careful about how much they want to push that envelope. And I think they're curiously aware of that. You just got to bide your time with these moves. You've got to be decisive and you've got to be sharp if you want to make it happen. We see, for example, right here is Eggert, Lee, and Worley all together in a fairly close trio. And Lee is in the most difficult position out of the three. Too much attacking, he leaves himself open to Worley. Not enough attacking, he leaves himself open to Worley. And he's just not got any kind of easy run through here. He has to be playing at his absolute best.
Yeah, certainly. He's got to be looking ahead and always looking behind us. Here we have the battle for P2 once again into turn 12. Sorry, we could see Wrench there looking up the inside, sending a bit of a dummy move on Jack Simpson, and then just slops behind back into P2 here as they head their way into the penultimate corner, and then of course past the pit lane entry, and then back down towards turn 1. We are 10 minutes of the way in, still 49 to go. Of course, pit stops we expect to see, I'd assume, around the halfway point. Some of them might go a little bit later here. All depends on how you fueled the car up for the first stint. As we head our way back down to turn 1, Wrench to the inside, yet again having a look but not committing. Of course, a long race to go here. There's no point going for a move if there's a chance that you'll come together. You might as well wait until you're alongside or until the car ahead makes a mistake before you go for that move, because the last thing you want to do is end your own race or give yourself damage instead of just waiting and going for it when that opportunity is provided, as they head their way back through that first sector once again. And I'm starting to notice here Bailey Vernon Higgs is making a couple of mistakes and has now dropped to 1.3 seconds back from David Wrench here. So possibly Vernon Higgs' fight isn't that P2 or 1. It's just about getting that podium and getting some decent points on the board.
Well, I think the other outcome when you have a fight like this, especially as the front, is that you push each other forward. We've seen the fastest lap of the session get dropped time and time again, and it is always these two. It's Simpson, then it's Wrench. It's Simpson again, and then it's Wrench with an immediate counter. And right now, Wrench is the one holding the flag with a .180. We do have a drive-through penalty being cleared for the number 33 car. That's Connor Palmer. So I believe that there may have been track limits violations substantial enough to be automatically handed a penalty by the in-game stewards. And there will be even more pressure mounting on him as a result. So the last thing you want to deal with is that massive time deficit for drive-through.
Yeah, that is the last thing that will, because it costs so much time, especially in a race like this, which is just a, just a 1 hour race. It's not like you can work it back over a whole 24-hour stint like you would in some of our endurance races. There's only 1 hour to get things done, as that's Glimberry in the Mercedes having a spin out of 13. I'm not sure if that's due to contact or just losing the rear on that curb heading out of turn 13. Let's see what happens here to Glimberry as we head our way into the braking zone. Of course, a very, very difficult left-hander. And does he lose the rear? You can see, touches that grey curb on the inside. And like I said in qualifying, do not touch that curb, whatever you do. And we can see there, Berry is unfortunately paid for it as we head our way back down to turn 1. Lots of drivers looking to make moves, and we can see Berry there looking to try and get back ahead of George Powsland.
I was going to say, is that even a case you could argue of a bit of lift-off oversteer, just trying to keep the nose in and getting too close to, as you said, that grey curb?
Yeah, it's a horrible curb. I think every single series I've seen around this track, that curb is always a lethal one. It's such a horrible curb. I don't think they should make it exist if it's like that for every series. And unfortunately, it's kind of ruined Berry's race. That is very late into turn 5, and that scared me as well for a moment, as well. Could be a slight penalty there to the car behind, that being Davidson.
Yeah, I'm sure that would get investigated, flagged up, but yeah, Davidson into the back of Dingo. Dingo does retain the position, and I think, Davidson, in fact, did yield off to retain the position for him, so being a good sport there, always commended. But at the same time, got to be careful, because you cannot outbrake your opponents by as much as you think in a lot of these situations.
Definitely, and also a big welcome to Waifu Wares. I hope I said that right. Wally getting close, certainly is looking to make moves here. He's Wally on the back of Ethan Lee, and of course a big welcome to Joe Doyle as well in the chat. Great to have you all in here with us for this race. And while you're here, why don't you let us know your predictions of who you think will win? Because at the moment, I don't think it's an easy one, because normally you'd say, right, whoever's in first is going to win, because so far they've been dominant. But here, we've actually got quite a big battle between now our top three, all within a second and a half of each other. So one little mistake in a pit stop or just one mistake on track could certainly give Wrench and Vernon Higgs an opportunity here. So they've just got to keep on their feet the whole race long and hope something happens in their favour, as we do see Waifu saying all on Wrenchy. So Wrench is the one that the chat think will win.
Yeah, time is of the essence, but one thing's for sure, when the field is going to be running close like this, they're going to be bringing fireworks. I mean, Glenn's made a great recovery, at least in terms of composure and of speed. He's onto the back of Pausland now, who has had a bit of a wobble, but is now trying to find some form again. I think, like you said, it's tough to call a winner at this stage. It is very early on still, but I think even with that in mind, on the one hand, Simpson has been such a tour de force coming into the second half of the season, and in the last couple of races, he has been something else. He really has lit that fire. But Wrench is Mr. Consistent at the top end. He's got 3 wins to his name, 2 seconds, 3 fastest laps. His peak pace is certainly up there. His peak pace is nearly off the charts. So he has just as much of a chance of winning, and I think that's in part why Bailey Vernon Higgs is currently being left a little bit out to dry. He's dropped a whole second in the last few laps, and I think that might be a big part of it.
Certainly, but I remember as well, when I was here for Brands Hatch, there was a lot. Oh, that's Davidson somehow
Good save.
keeping the car out of the barriers. That was an insane save there by Peter Davidson. Normally, in this game, once your car's gone, it's gone. There's no saving it, but a great job there by the McLaren. But as I was saying originally, I remember when I was here for Brands Hatch last time, a couple of rounds ago, pit stops caused a lot of trouble, and there was drivers losing a lot of time and drivers gaining time. So that's something our top three have got to be careful of. We know here that the pit stops are crucial. You make one small mistake, and that is your lead gone, because when the gaps are a second between each other, you know, it's like a blink of an eye. You lose that 1 second, and that is your fight for the win over here. So that's one thing they've got to make sure they get correct. As Ethan Lee there, right on the back of Conor Eggert there for P4. We'll have to see what the BMW can do on the back of the Ferrari, and you can see as we went on the offboard, but of this battle, immediately Eggert's to the inside line, defending that spot there from Ethan Lee. And of course, if you can defend around here, there's no way on earth anybody's going to pass you. And well, that's an interesting way to do it, because I think there was a tap from Ethan Lee, and Conor Eggert got caught in the midst of it.
Yeah, that's looking a little bit nasty there. Let's take a bit of a replay and see exactly what happened. So we're jumping aboard with the helicopter now. This is replay, exactly what happens between Eggert and Lee. I think we're going to see Eggert dropping down in a moment. See, and yep, it is a little bit of a tap there. Eggert tries to go for the recover, kicks to the left and straight into the path of a surging BMW. So now Eggert is going to be completely out of it, it looks like, as we can no longer jump to his camera. And yeah, he is completely disconnected.
Ah, big shame. A big shame there for Conor Eggert, who was on for a P4 in this race. But we'll get back to the action as the drivers still here. We have Pausland and Barry still having a battle for P7, of course. Barry made a mistake at turn 13 and now has to try and get past the McLaren once again, as we see in chat. Wally takes advantage in the Colonel's car. Indeed, and helps P4 here for Brian Worley as we head our way back down towards turn number 8 and 9 at the chicane. Here we can see Worley in the Ferrari, in the KFC car. Lovely livery.
Oh,
and the thing is, It's not like he's just thrown a KFC logo on there. There's actually been effort into the way it's all designed, and I really like it.
I'm sorry, but anyone who says otherwise needs to take a good look in the mirror. This is art in motion. I don't care what anyone says. This is automotive art. I mean, look at it. It's P4 right now, and the only thing you would get more poetic is if he was in P11 for every herb and spice. Is it 11 or 13?
One of the two. I don't know. It's one of them. I know it's
11.
11
It
or
is 11.
13. Is it? Yeah. Wow.
But no,
Many
he has
away
been
from that.
amazing. It has been amazing.
Yeah, really like it. And the thing is as well, the colours are nice. I like the red, so it's just a nice livery in
It's
general.
vibrant.
But here we go once again. Look at the gap now to Bailey, Vernon, Higgs. 2.5 seconds here. So they are just pulling away now from that third spot. And of course then Worley, another 11 back. These top two are absolutely on fire here at the moment as we head our way out to turn 3, back up to turn 4 at the top of the hill. And just for now, Jack Simpson still with that little bit of an edge over David Drench, but of course, as we know, things can change quickly here. Of course, whenever pit stops get underway, I'd presume in around 15 to 20 minutes time, that's when we could see a possible change for the lead. But until then, I don't think it's going to be that easy for Wrench to make a move unless he can somehow get right alongside into turn 1. Because a corner like this here, even though you're only a 10th back, you've never got a chance of making the move. And if you do, you're probably going to take both of you out as well.
Yes, they've got to be careful. I think when you have long and prolonged battles like this, you've got to keep your patience and your ego in check. And that can be very hard to do. If you feel, especially if you are a lot faster and you just keep getting blocked at inopportune places, it's tough to keep the reins on it. And every driver has their patience limit. In a high situation, or high pressure situation like this, you often will resort to sometimes more and more aggressive runs, more and more aggressive overtakes, and just like that, what could be a great battle that has been lasting for 4 to 5 laps could quickly turn into disaster and a major contact between two cars. We see right there Simpson going a little bit narrower, go to the inside of the track and then slowly peel away back to the racing line. Reg trying to respond, goes to the right side even further, but no dice. Unfortunately, he's going to be staying behind, trying to outbrake even just for a second, not able to get close enough.
No, you can just see he gets close and close, but I think it's not the fact he hasn't got the confidence to make it, because I think he certainly has, but he'd rather just do it without any sort of risk of contact, and it's just a clever way that Wrench is managing it. And the same goes for Simpson, because another good thing is Simpson's not immediately darting to the left, he's not blocking the road, he's just defending very well and very cleanly. So this battle, no matter what, I think is going to end in a good shape. I've said that, and they're going to take each other out now, I guarantee it. But no, realistically,
You had to say something.
it's a really good battle, and I'm sure these two will take it all the way to the end. As Cat Bain, one of our moderators, welcome in. Great to have you in here with us. Of course, we are about halfway through nearly of this evening's race, and so far we've had quite a nice battle at the front, and also a lot of little battles in the midfield as well, as we can see one here between P8, P9 and P10, as Barry has got that move done ahead of Powellsland, and you can see how quickly he's shot away, and the second time now we've seen Davidson overshoot it into turn 5.
Yeah, just a bit too hot coming in there, not able to really take that one. But it is a quite condensed train of cars, say P8 through to, say, P12. Matt Steeler's on the cusp. Will have a bit of a problem. Ooh, saying that though, there has been a major issue. Looks like an incident between the number 33 and 70 cars. That's Tyrone and Connor Palmer. Palmer is just rolling backwards down the start-finish straight. Not sure what the game is. I think Tyrone was trying to yield, but it wasn't happening. Let's take a bit of a replay and see exactly what happened. So Palmer, Tyrone, coming through. Final corner now. Tyrone tries to go narrow. You can see Palmer taking a big slide there. Re-gripping into the back straight, but just, rear quarter hit. I think Tyrone was trying to slow down in the hope that Palmer would right themselves and take the position back, but in the end just happened to wait too long and went ahead anyhow.
Well, I mean, Tyrone's race was over anyway, wasn't it? As here we can see Dingo looking for a move on his fellow McLaren into turn number 1 here, looking to get ahead of Powellsland on the exit of turn 2, has got a decent run here. as we head our way down into the braking zone. Can he get that P8 spot away? He can, but he runs deep into the braking zone, allows Pelson to come back at him as they head into the right-hander. But it's the inside line for Dingo. Off the track goes Perisland, will have to rejoin. Has the inside line heading up to turn 4 and keeps the position. I mean, in F1, that'd be a penalty, but here seems to get away with it as we do see Dingo going for a send into turn 5.
Oh, Davidson, third time is not the charm. In fact, third time's the harm as he goes for a spin coming out and wobbling the car across that curb and through the grass. Is going to re-emerge out of turn 5 into P13 and dropping. There's Jack Lemon going past him. He's going to slot himself back into the order just ahead of Craig Lua, but not a good time for him there. So not having the best luck with that corner in particular. That seems to be a sticking point for him. Fortunately, just made a bit too catastrophic of an error. Powsland, and meanwhile, is going to be behind Dingo. But yeah, I think in any sort of stewarding situation, that would immediately be scrutinised as gaining an unfair advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure something will be said after that for that one as we continue our way on back in towards the final corner. And here we can see George Powsland will go into the pit lane. Our first pit stop, I believe, of the race in terms of just the standard pit stop, nothing for damage or any issues. We'll go in and we'll have to see where he comes out. Peter Davidson as well is off into the pit lane as here we can see Matt Steele on the back of Luke Cleland as we head our way into turn number 1. The two Ferraris battle and still Cleland stays ahead of Steele as they head their way through that first corner. And then looking back up at the front once again, Ethan Lee looking to try and close back in on Ryan Worley. And then we see our battle for first and second once again. Wrench and Simpson are just within a couple of tenths of each other. And I reckon they'll also be thinking about pitting soon because they have got a decent gap ahead of ahead of Worley. So they might actually feed out into around P5 or 6 here because Berry's also another 13 seconds back from 6th place.
I mean, I'd argue that because they're so far ahead, they don't want to pit for a little bit yet. I think there's two ways that they could play this. They could either go for a quote-unquote optimal strategy, where in 2 laps' time, as close as they can get to the 30-minute mark while entering the pit lane, they go in. And then they both take their mandatory pit stop with the window. Option 2 is they go further on their initial stint, just out of the fact that they have their own pocket of the track. They're running fast, they're pushing each other forward, and there doesn't seem to be much in the way of stopping them. They may have to yield off eventually just for sake of overdriving the car and giving it a little bit too much, but at the same time, these two are relatively undisturbed, so I think taking an earlier pit stop coming out into traffic is a risk for them.
Yeah, certainly they've got to be careful of coming out in traffic, especially, you know, considering the traffic is a lot slower than these two. They don't want to get caught off guard by people braking earlier or not taking as much speed through into a corner. As here we can see Craig Fitton into the pit lane as well. Going to be making his pit stop in this race. And I've noticed so far all of the McLarens have pit bar a couple at the front, so maybe they've got a bit of a lower fuel tank compared to some of those other cars here. I'm not sure, but I'm just looking at different things to point out here as we head our way through sector 2 with those top 2. And here we go to Mark Gladwell in a beautiful Lexus. Livery is astonishing. The car itself looks really nice. A really, really good livery here. And it says Gladys, so I presume that must be Mark Gladwell's nickname.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I have a soft
head.
spot.
Wrench is ahead.
Ooh, okay, let's rewind the clocks back here. Let's rewind the clock, see exactly how that move triggered and played out. As we did have a brief moment where Wrench was ahead there. Let's see, going into the final sector here, final few corners, Wrench firing it down the inside. And you can see challenging for that spot here. They're both of them jousting side by side here. Simpson did have the inside line and he was able to hold off the McLaren. So now back to status quo, but Wrench knows that he could get under his skin. He knows that he's able to now get alongside and still be able to hold pace, hold the challenge. This is the break that Wrench needs. This is the break in the armour that he wanted to find, and now he can exploit it.
I mean, something tells me that possibly he wants to pit soon, and he'd rather head into the pits in the lead than being in second place, of course, behind the car that would probably pit very likely on on the same lap. As we can see as well, Bailey Vernon Higgs is also in the pits, Cleland and Dingo as well, making their pit stops, so I don't think it's far away for the lead to make their pits here in this race as we head our way through the middle sector, through the Mickey Mouse section, and then of course in towards turns 10 and 11. And Wrench there just closing in, bringing that gap down ever more as we head our way back down to the end of this second sector. And Wrench this time staying behind into the braking zone, not keen to make a move ahead of Jack Simpson just yet. As we did see both of them there run a tad wide into turn 12 and then into 13. Wrench will run a little bit wide, and let's see, do they make their pit stops? I think they do. Well, Simpson won't, but Wrench will. So our last McLaren in the lead in trainers now gone into the pits, and we'll have to see if that's going to be an advantage or a disadvantage.
I think it's a smart move. I think it's a smart move, honestly. I think Wrench getting out of the toe of Simpson is wise there. I think he is going for that optimal strategy. I think he was expecting Simpson to do the same, but now that he knows that he's not, he does have a chance here at being able to squeeze a little bit of time, potentially undercut on to Simpson here. We'll see when Wrench is able to actually come out of the pits. We're looking at pit times of around 60 to 70 seconds. So we see Glenberry also heading in. Tyrone has been in there for a decent chunk of time. Was barring the drive-throughs that can occasionally come in for drivers like we saw with Connor Palmer. There will be a bit of an equalising factor in the pit stops. Matt Steele also jumping in as well. Ethan Lee hot on the heels, now in a podium position, even if provisionally only, on the back of Ryan Worley, who's now in P2.
Indeed, and we'll have to see what Worley can do, of course, in this position. David Wrench there coming out side by side with the car further down. That, I think, is going to be Jack Lemon, isn't it? But does get slightly ahead and up into P5, and that has saved, I think, Wrench's race here, because if he ended up behind the likes of Lemon and Lua, that will give a big advantage to Jack Simpson, just to allow him to pit, and then of course be back ahead. So great there by Wrench, calling it perfectly, and now has free air as Jack Simpson bails into the pits, and we'll have to see whereabouts he comes out. But yet again, we can see pit stop wise, Bailey Vernon Higgs, who pitted a lap earlier, has now got two cars separating himself and Wrench. Before it was only, well, none. It was just him and Wrench.
Yeah, as they were now. Wrench is going to be ahead of Lemon, and like you said, that is the benchmark. That is a good litmus test for how much time he has and how much he's able to hold on to. P5 after a pit stop here at the Hungaroring. No small feat. So it really is a testament to the amount of pace that these drivers have built up. We can see Jack Simpson, he's going to get overtaken this time by Davis. Simpson is in fourth. 30 seconds. And we will soon see who has got the Moxie, who's got the speed. Who's going to come out on top. Simpson coming up very close to that pit time line. Remember, it's about 60 to 70 seconds per pit stop.
Moving.
He is moving now. So where his pit box is going to be very determinate of the position. We're on board with the helicopter, seeing who is going to win this drag race. It is going to be Simpson, just out ahead by about a second. He's going to squeeze this one, and in fact squeeze a bit more advantage on the McLaren.
Indeed, and that is helpful there for Jack Simpson, as here we see Peter Davidson in P14 not being the best race at all here for Peter, as he heads his way through the middle sector now on the back of George Pelsland, who he was on the back of earlier on as well. It's just been these two here having their own little battles. That was up in the midfield, they've pitted, and they're now battling at the back. As Davidson, you can just see every time he gets onto the brakes, he just looks a little bit uncertain, and of course many times has broke a little bit too late and has actually made contact with a couple of cars. So he's got to be careful on the back of different cars ahead of him not to end up hitting them, and of course giving himself damage and those ahead damage, as we do see Lua and Gladwell into the pits. They'll drop out behind this little battle. I think they'll come out in I presume P14, P15, something like that. And then, of course, further ahead, Wrench has already brought that gap down quickly. It was 1.4 seconds, now 6/10 between our two leaders. So let's see how that can change things in this race, because I'd presume now, fuel-wise, Jack Simpson's got a little bit less fuel, so he should be a little bit better on his tyres. His tyres are all, I don't think, have they changed tyres or not in this, do you know?
I'm not too sure. I think they're just sort of running with the set that they have, because you can go, I think, with an optional tyre swap. I think fuel is mandatory.
Okay, so they probably have both got old tyres, but less fuel means a lighter car, and also better just in general to drive, and that's what could give Jack Simpson the win here, as this could end a bit bad as they head into turn 1, and they're getting past, I believe,
Fitton.
Is that Fitton? Yes, it is. So not gone too well for Fitton and Palmer, who've now been laps in this race.
A bit of a squeeze coming in from Wrench there, but holding composure and showing good sportsmanship alike. We'll see Jack Lemon also coming up to the back of Vernon Higgs, soon to make their way out of the first sector. Lemon is going to be caught unawares, and they feel that drop a little bit. It's the 29 car and the number 1 car that continue to be the battle to watch, as these are the prospective leaders of the race. The only drivers yet to pit are Lemon, Davis, Lee and Worley, who is currently Worley in the lead. Worley in the lead.
Great for Ryan Worley in the KFC car, who's now decided to pit, so won't be in the lead for much longer here, but still should come out in around P7, P8, I reckon, because that gap down to Bury is around 70 to 80 seconds here, so could still be a decent spot here for Worley, and Lee and Davis behind.
I think still plenty of opportunity. And we are, of course, crossing over that halfway point. This is where most, if not all, of the drivers on this field are looking at their pit stops. So we've only got Lemon left to go. Of course, pit stop is still a viable option if you have any significant damage, or if you're going to be limping home. You might need to take a bit of a emergency stop just to keep safe and make sure that you can actually make it home. Let me tell you, too many times have I seen drivers under fuel or go with the ideal fuel amount, drive the car harder, and then get left out stuck.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? You've got to be on point with your pit stops, and of course making sure that you have the right mindset heading into that final stint, as we do see Wrench there going deep and Simpson there looking to go back up the inside. And there we go, they emerge out of turn 3, and this is close action here between our top 2 in the race. Simpson looking to go the outside at turn 4, looking to scare the car ahead of David Wrench, as here we can see Ryan Worley dropping back out in P5, but back with the leaders through in towards turn 5, into the braking zone now of the chicane. And is Simpson going to go for a dive bomb? No, chooses just to sit back as they head their way through.
I say Simpson is going to be on the back foot now, but he doesn't seem all that phased. It's early days here. We'll see how he's racing and how he's lapping in about 10 laps time when he gets very close to the end. But Simpson has put up a formidable defense up until this point.
Yeah, he has. Brilliant job by both of them here in this race so far. But of course, Wrench now getting the better of Simpson and jumping up into the top spot. And I think realistically, if he could just defend his lines perfectly, it should be a win for Wrench and a P2 here for Simpson. And of course, Bailey Vernon Higgs up in the top 3 still, so not the worst race in the world for Vernon Higgs. And then of course Ethan Lee with a nice gap now over Ryan Worley, so it could possibly be a P4 confirmed for the BMW of Lee. And then of course further back we've got lots of other battles forming, P8 down to P11, we've got P12 down to P14, all squabbling for position. And Simpson here looking to the inside yet again. It's a bit of a half-hearted move. Goes for a send, but knows that most likely it won't work. But just trying to scare Wrench and making him run a bit wide or go a bit too defensive here. And eventually, if he gets it, if he gets that dummy right, it could work.
Yeah, that could be the strategy here. So he place himself in a awkward position, but then throw the dummy to the side, put Wrench out on a bad line, and then squeeze your way through the gap that you've created. That could be the way forward. And I think that Simpson is, like we saw with Wrench prior, just gauging his options. He's seen how Wrench performs from an attacking perspective, but defending is still an unknown.
Yeah, certainly. We've got to see how Wrench can defend here as we head our way through this middle sector once again. Of course, 21 minutes to go here, so around 2/3 of the race has been completed, and now our top three remains the same, just in a different order. Wrench now ahead of Simpson and Vernon Higgs. Of course, earlier on it was Simpson ahead of Wrench, as we head our way back down towards turn number 12. But I want to see further back, as here we have Peter Davidson looking for a move on George Pelsland into turn 1. There you can see the McLaren braking late, going a little bit deep, and still not coming out ahead unless he can get a decent exit out of turn 2. Into the braking zone, there you go. It's Davidson on the outside, Pelsland on the inside, and no move can be made, and Pelsland still keeps that P10 spot here ahead of Peter Davidson. And then of course coming up is turns 4 and 5, and turn 5 has not been a happy corner for Davidson this evening. Let's see what he can do this time around.
See how he can handle this. So Davidson is going to be coming up to that infamous corner. Seems to handle it well this time. I think he's learned how he can gauge that corner a bit more through a bit of trial and error, and is trying to keep the proximity to Pelsland, although Pelsland cuts the chicane. See there, he makes a bit of a mistake on the entry, cuts the chicane, and doesn't lose any time. In fact, he gains slightly. So wonder if that is going to be scrutinised in any form. Curiously, we have lost another driver in all of this. Tyrone has left the building. We somewhat foresaw it coming, but it is a shame nonetheless. That is going to put him even further down in that championship order. And it's going to make it even harder to come back, considering its competition is at the sharp end.
Yeah, that's a shame, because I like the Bentley. It's a really nice car. We don't see it often, so it's nice to actually see it on track. But unfortunately, tonight was not Tyrone's night. But you can just see it's been a difficult race, hasn't it, for everybody. I mean, look at the gaps. They're never this large. At least when I was here last time, they weren't. Really big gaps here through the field. It just shows how difficult the Hungaroring is. In any car, never mind GT3s, which are a lot more heavy. You've got to force them into corners, which around here, don't want cars being forced into them. You've really got to struggle, and of course our top three have done perfect. Everybody that finishes the race has done a perfect job here, but of course if you're Tyrone, someone who's normally fighting for a lead, fighting for a top three, do you really want to bother driving down in P18 40 seconds back? You don't, do you? You know, at that point I'd also consider calling it an evening, and of course getting ready for round 8 next time out, which I believe is going to be at Zandvoort. Another difficult track, a bit like the Hungaroring, isn't it, really? Just a bit more hilly.
Yeah, I think the Zandvoort camber speaks for itself. It can help with getting these GT3s rotated, but that's not saying much. It still is a GT3 car. You still have to wrangle it, and as heavy as these machines can be, sort of coaxing them into turns more than driving and turning them, they still produce astronomical amounts of grip and downforce through those aggressive kits. Almost DTM-esque, say back in the day, with the amount of aggressive winglets, canards, aero ducting. Not as aggressive as in its sort of peak heyday, but still pretty close, with a lot less of the dirty air. So it's good racing, and of course hardcore high speeds. And I think Zandvoort, as difficult of a track as it is, will produce.
Yeah, indeed, it's been a difficult one, hasn't it? As here we can see Matt Steele in P14 on the back of Craig Lua as they head into the final corner. 70 minutes to go in this race. A lot of work still to be done for many drivers, of course, at the front. That battle is certainly not over, but it's definitely going to be quite difficult now for Simpson to make an overtake, if any, as they head their way through turn 13. And then, of course, further back, those battles still starting to brew up. But, of course, with the nature of this track, it's difficult for anybody to really make a move. So even if you're at the back or at the front, it's such a hard task to get an overtake done. As I think Simpson there, from the angle he was on, looked like he went a bit sideways, heading out to the final corner, and has lost time to Wrench in the process.
Yeah, the tiniest amount of slip can be very costly. We see that Wrench has gained half a second to Simpson just through that small hiccup alone. Everything counts at this point. You're looking at 21 laps for Connor Palmer and then 24 laps in for David Wrench. So quite a disparity in field spread, multiple laps behind in some cases, but 24 laps in, coming up to 25 soon. Final 15 minutes are rapidly approaching. And with the pits being open for 10 more minutes, let's hope that nobody has any major altercations.
We've got to hope, but of course now you've said it, Sappy, that means someone's going to have some sort of incident now.
I speak not.
The commentator's curse will certainly rupture as we continue on here into turn number 13, and Davidson is also the last driver we want to be on board with when we talk about altercations, because of course he's had a couple of incidents today. You can see again, every time he just brakes too late and overcooks it and has to try and fight it on the exit, so his tyres will be screaming at him as well as we head our way back down to turn 1. And here's the battle for P8 and below. Dingo, Clellan, Powelson, Davidson, and then of course behind that there's another battle forming as well as we head our way through. And here's the rear wing of Dingo 200, who was he here before? Because I didn't see Dingo when I was commentating here last. Is he one of the newer drivers, or did he just take a break the week I was here originally?
I think he just took a break because he has been here round in, round out. We've had a couple, of course, since the start of the season. We've had a lot of drivers who are experimenting with liveries, changing liveries, adding their own. And that has been something that's also been very interesting to see. You do see Simpson kind of throw a dummy to the inside of turn 1 on to Wrench. He's not going to have any success in this field, but he is going to succeed in placing a bit of strain on that McLaren, getting very close and laying claim to that inner apex. He's going to get that car nice and cleanly rotated through. You can see he's trying to switch back as he goes through that first sector, out turn 3 and into the next section of the course. Of course, turn 4 is a quick left-hand kink, managing to both handle it with poise, and then into turn 5, running very aggressive, trying to get a little bit out of the dirty air there. You can see he's waggling to the left and also keep that car's engine and cooling temperatures under control. Hairpin now, very close once again. It goes a little bit to the left, tries to outbrake, but has to take a bit of evasive action. That is a time loss through sector 2. Their way through turns 8 and 9. Smooth running. And looks like Wrench isn't feeling too phased by Jack Simpson's presence. He's got the move done, and now he can take his foot off the pedal. He's got that fight out of his system. Doesn't need to go as aggressive as he once did. Simpson, though, he is going to be the polar opposite. He was able to hold the line, and now he's got a lot on his hands from all of a sudden being in the P2 position, and if he's not careful, dropping time.
Indeed, as they continue on, and of course at this point here for the likes of Simpson, he can probably afford to go for a send and lose time because of it, because he knows that, you know, he's got to make the move. If he doesn't, he's second place. If he goes for it and makes a mistake, he's still second. So going for that move, you might as well try it and hope it works, because if it doesn't, it doesn't, and unfortunately you'll finish the position that you probably are most likely to finish anyway, as these two continue their way on back down towards turns 2 and 3. And of course it just shows how difficult it is around here to make moves, and of course Wrench made that move based on the fact he pitted a bit earlier, got those tyres nice and warmed up, and then just charged past Simpson, and it shows it's not just a pace advantage, because he's not flew off. The gap's the same as it was when it was Wrench on the back of Simpson, so it just shows how competitive these two are, and nobody's better than them. I mean, Bailey Vernon Higgs, second in the championship, I believe. He's one of the most competitive drivers here in this field, and he's 9 seconds back. I mean, that is unheard of, isn't it, in this championship?
Such a wild turn of events, and I'm looking more prominently towards the points end of the scale. Now, if Wrench has this stand, he's going to push himself even further ahead of Vernon Higgs, with Tyrone taking even more of a drop owing to losing this round. This is going to be a chance for Glimberry as well, because he's in P7 right now. He's been a bit of a silent riser. He hasn't necessarily tracked on our radar, but he is still nonetheless going to be giving it his all and really getting a chance to move upwards. Simpson, though, could be a big move for them. They will have technically every podium plus a fastest lap if they do come in second today. So they're going to complete the full set and get a royal flush just like Tyrone did. And that will launch them into some good points, potentially into the top 5.
Could be. They've got to see what they can do here. Of course, a top 5 is more than possible here. As we head our way back into turn 1, of course, our two leaders are more than happy with the top 2. I think would be very disappointed if they managed to finish 3rd or lower here, as they continue their way on down towards turn 2. 11 minutes to go, so you're looking at around, what, 5-6 laps here in this race, and then that is it here. So Wrench has only got 5 laps to go to defend ahead of Jack Simpson, and at the moment it's looking like it's going to be very difficult for Simpson to get any sort of move and jump up into that top spot. Once again, he's got to go for a last lap dash, I think, if Simpson wants to go for a move, kind of catch Wrench off guard, go for a move somewhere you don't normally overtake. That's the only way I think that Simpson can get ahead here, because Wrench, as we've seen all season long, is just too consistent. His pace is always consistently quick, so you know, you can never really hope for him to make a mistake, because he doesn't. He never makes mistakes.
Well, now that you've said it, Nick.
I think Steve, he's going to make a mistake now.
No, you are quite right though. The consistency is the big make or break factor that is separating the top of this field relative to the others. When you look at the Wrenches, the Simpsons, you'd argue as well, who's found a new lease of life in this half of the championship. Vernon Higgs, up until this point, Tyrone, although Tyrone has taken a bit of a hit this last couple of rounds, he's not been doing too hot. Kind of wonder what's going on there. But it is the consistency, consistent points that you bring back again and again and again. The reason that Vernon Higgs is in second, despite not getting a single win, is because he's got 4 second places on the trot. That's the consistency we're talking about. He's not got the same highs, but he's not got the same lows either, and is equaling out very, very nicely.
It certainly is, as they continue their way on. Of course, looking back as well, we can still see that likes of Lewis looking to make moves on Housen. We can see here Cleland looking to get ahead of Dingo and jump up into P8, and Lewis actually right on the back of Harrelson as well, so it'll be great to see that battle. Just a couple of tenths separating those two for P12 here in the field as they head into turn number 5. Can the Ferrari get ahead of the McLaren? At the moment, it's not looking that likely. Into the chicane they go, and you can see there the backfiring of the McLaren into the braking zone, and both hopping the curbs. And I think it must have been a mistake there by Powson, considering how close that Lewis got for a moment as they head their way through the middle sector. And then, of course, back down towards turn 12. And I think it's great to see this race. We've had so many little battles form, because obviously there's a big disparity in pace. But at least in every group, there's people that are the same pace. So we've got, of course, a front field battle. Then we've got midfield 8 to P11. Then, of course, a little bit further behind them, we've also got another battle between 3 drivers. So it's great to see those little pockets form here. And, of course, that makes the great racing great. And also, those who are in the midfield, or, well, I don't know, example would be Davis here in P6. Car's 5 seconds ahead, the other one's 6 seconds behind. Those further down might not be earning as many points, but they'll be having a lot more fun battling.
Yeah, they will really just be able to stretch their legs in the racing department, and this is where you tend to see things like splits or even classes, multi-class racing happening with the red, white and grey driver numbers. But more than anything, this is a championship that isn't just built for winning. I think a lot of the drivers are here just to have a good time, to stretch their legs in the sim racing department, to have some good sporting racing with minimal drama, minimal fuss. We see Davidson get past Cleland here, or at least be able to hold his nerve as the two briefly swapped positions for a split second coming out of turn 4 and into turn 5. It looks like these two were neck and neck. Like, Davidson is now going to be the one who's able to pull and get away. But we have just about 5 minutes of proper racing time before everyone is going to lock in their positions, and about 5 more laps to go. So with that in mind, we do still have Simpson and Wrench really pushing each other, so you can't call which way this goes.
No, you can't. It's going to be a really good ending. And whoever wins deserves it fully. It's been a really good race between these two, constantly pushing each other to their limits, of course. In the first stint, it was the opposite. It was Simpson constantly under pressure from Wrench, and of course this time around, it's the opposite. And now it's Wrench under pressure from Simpson. They both drove a brilliant race here this evening. So, well, as a commentator, of course, you're neutral. You're not biased to any side. So, you kind of wish that both of them could win, because they both deserve it here, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely do. They really have brought their A game, and I cannot ask for anything more. As far as races go, these two have had a near perfect one.
Yeah, definitely. It's been unstoppable, hasn't it, from these two? I mean, normally you'd have cars behind try and pose some sort of attack and pressure, but after I'd say the first 5 or 6 laps, Vernon Higgs was, 3-4 seconds back. From that point, he knew that race wasn't with them, so he just focused on being consistent and getting that P3. And these top two have just, they've been insane, haven't they? I think this might be one of the most competitive races we've seen so far, and it shows that in racing you don't just need overtakes. You can actually have cars just sitting behind each other, and it still gives you so many things to think about, doesn't it? Of, where they're going to make moves, what they're going to do strategy-wise. So even though we haven't had lots of on-track action, it's still been a really enthralling race.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting in a different kind of way. You were alluding to it there with the strategy, but racing isn't just about the wheel-to-wheel combat, it's the setups, it's the mind games, it's the consistency and the mental fortitude being put on display by the racers. I mean, look at Jack Lemmon right now. It's somewhat cliche to say out loud, but you can almost watch his thoughts in real time through the movements of the car. He's saying to himself, right, I'm going to peel into the inside, get out of the dirty air, get my car with some cool air so my aero works properly. Am I going to throw it in? Nope, I'm not going to throw it in. I'm just going to try and catch him off guard here, see how it plays out. Oop, that didn't quite work, etc. It's that constant stream of thought as these drivers make split-second, moment-to-moment decisions, and they have to be doing that at the peak of their awareness. They have to be constantly clued in on exactly what's going around them, especially at the start. There's so much happening, that chaotic romp to a place of safety. That's why I always admire the racers and admire the driving, regardless of whether they're next to another car or not.
Yeah, and this race has been one of those, hasn't it? There's been so much respect between everybody racing on track, especially our top two. They've been side by side on many occasions, not once have you seen anyone push anyone off or contact. They've just driven side by side and had some great racing as we head our way back up to the top of the hill. Turn number 4 minutes to go in this race, and then further back we can see as well more battles evolving. Has there been contact? As soon as I said it's been clean, I think there's been contact with Cleland and Lemon.
They're going to be a tight one here, and these two have been pushing each other in terms of the limits for a good while now. It's going to be a tough one as these two are known to come to blows. We did have a brief incident warning. We will see.
As they head their way through into turn 12 once again. Of course, Lemon still on the back of Cleland here. This will be a great battle to end off their race for P10. Of course, that top 10 spot as they head out at turn 13. A bit wide there for Cleland, who's going into the pits there. So I suspect could be a bit of damage on Cleland's car. Not ideal, as they will have to drop down to a rain. Possibly P15, P16 here. Not being the best race at all for Luke. And then, of course, further ahead now we can see Davidson still on the back of Dingo, and then of course at the front that battle still for the lead. 3/10 between Wrench and Simpson into turn 1. Oh, that's going to be a move by Simpson. Can he get it done? I think he has.
Big squeeze there. Both of them really angling for it, and Simpson decided to throw all the eggs into this basket. They're going into turn 2. They're going to go parallel, side by side. Brief contact made, Wrench squeezing in a little bit further out to the side, trying to get an optimal line and prevent any kind of switchbacks coming in from the Lamborghini. Simpson having to return back a couple of tenths behind and just squeezing away, constantly hammering at that wall. You've only really got 2 laps left to go here, because I think they are just going to scrape into the final seconds before they get a chance to go through. So Simpson will really be running out of time.
Yeah, certainly. There's got to, well, like we said earlier on, eventually he's going to have to bite and go for that move, and he did it there at turn 1, didn't work, so he's got to think about doing it again, and possibly not at the same corner, because I guarantee once we get to turn 1 again, Wrench will be expecting a move. So maybe down towards turn 2, or a bit of a last lap lunge in towards turn 12 here maybe, is where Simpson's got to make the move, because Wrench now is expecting a turn 1 lunge here.
Yeah. It's going to be a bit of a lunge, to say the least. If he wants to make this work, he is going to have to pull the kind of card that we saw just a moment ago. There's Davis coming out of the pits for a second time. It is, it turns out, for drive-through penalties. So we have had a drive-through cleared for the number 13 car of Craig Lua. We had for the number 31 car. That is going to be for Luke Cleland, as why we head into the pits there and circumvent that battle. And then for the 51, who we just checked in with, that was Davis. So, leaders confirmed on the final lap. If Simpson wants to go for this, he needs to go for it now.
Yeah, he does. We've probably got... Is this the white flag lap now, or is it going to be one more after this?
This is the final lap.
So Simpson's he's got to go, hasn't he? The gap, a couple of tenths as they head into turn 2 and 3. This time around, you can see Simpson running a bit wide out of turn 2, of course, looking to go around the outside. Has now got a 6/10 gap as they head their way into turn 4. So... Turn 12, I think, is the only opportunity here for Simpson, who's just got to follow Wrench through this middle sector. But the issue is, ahead of Wrench, there's a lapped car.
Yeah, there is going to be a problem there. Luckily, there is blue flags being observed, so minimal issues being presented. They might encounter a certain fight over here as well, though, as Davidson and Dingo are going for a challenge. We'll see what's going to be coming to pass here. Looks like Pete Davidson's going to go for a bit of a squeeze on the side, but then you can see just behind him, there is a Wrench and a Simpson coming through.
Indeed, and into turn 13, I don't think there's anything that Jack Simpson can do here. Of course, this is the final lap of the race. White flag has been waved. And we'll see David Wrench here heading to the final corner for the final time. Has had an enthralling battle with Simpson all race long. Started P2, got the move done after the pit stop. David Wrench will cross the line and win here around the Hungaroring. And Jack Simpson finishes in P2 after fighting all race long. And then in around 14 seconds time, we'll see Bailey Vernon Higgs take that podium spot.
So these two can certainly come through to the end of the race with their heads held high. What a showing, what a performance from those two, fighting tooth and nail, start to finish. There is nothing else like it here, and that's what we love so much about these races. You're going to have Bailey Vernon Higgs coming into third, with Ethan Lee now coming through the final corner, turn 14, and battered, bruised, but not out of the fight. Lee in fourth, great showing. It's followed closely by Ryan Worley. He's turning up the heat with the number 30 and into P5. Glenberry coming through as well for the number 6 spot. And then we will have, of course, Davis going through soon as well. Then Dingo, Davidson close behind, challenging for that position still. And then the rest of the field with Lemon, Pousland, Steele, Cleland, Lua, Fitting, Gladwell and Palmer having already finished. It is going to be that last couple of cars pushing through.
Indeed, as they just head their way through the final couple of corners themselves. Here's Peter Davidson in ninth at the moment. Of course, a decent race for Davidson. It's been a bit of an up and down one. You never really knew where he was going to finish here in this race. Of course, we'll see Davis cross the line in P7, and then, of course, our final two cars to cross the line in this enthralling race around the Hungaroring. You can see, of course, Dingo will cross in 8th, and then Davidson in P9.
There you go, our timing board is filled, and we unfortunately did say goodbye to a few cars here, so we will have said bye to Palmer, Tyrone and Eggett, along with a couple of duplicates as well, but that is where we close things out. And we didn't get a chance to put our cameras on at the beginning, but it's been a brilliant race. And Nathan, closing thoughts, because I was certainly loving that one.
I mean, I'm excited for round 9, that is for sure. Of course, the championship itself is going to get really close. Of course, we head off to Zandvoort, another really difficult track, a little bit like the Hungaroring, just a little bit more hilly, a bit more like a roller coaster. So it's going to be a difficult one. Qualifying is going to matter more than here, because around Zandvoort there's literally nowhere to make a move apart from turn 1. So the drivers have got to nail qualifying. Unless, you know, you can start P2 or P3, that's fine. But when you're back in that midfield, P10, 11, you've got so much work to do. It's going to be difficult to find moves. So yeah, can't wait for the action next time out.
Yeah, of course. It'll be same time next week, folks, and you'll want to be there for it. So Zandvoort, it's a track that I love personally. I know it can be a bit love-or-hate with some, but it's certainly a favourite in my books. It's very almost roller coaster-like in the way that it's built. You've got a lot of camber that can really change the characteristics of your car. It's fascinating to watch the drivers drive it and be able to work that surface to best effect. But that's enough of me geeking out about a piece of pavement. That is going to be where we wrap it for today. Of course, if you want to keep on board with the championship, consider following the REF Esports Twitch channel. Of course, massive thanks to them. It is a great privilege to be able to broadcast this championship for you here on the channel. And say, from us at the team at Driveline, we'll see you next week, same time, to continue this championship. Goodbye for now.